Hey folks, Cool18 here, and welcome to Ireland. So, I gotta give a shout out to T. Averwolf, who emailed me the other day with an EU4 strategy that was out there that sounded like it might be really fun to try. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have room in my schedule for another Let's Play, and I've been doing some traveling this week, so it was a good time to just fit in a little bit of offline gaming. So, what's the deal with all of this? So, if you are a European power, and you are settling overseas, of course, ever since they added colonial nations, every time you got four provinces in a specific colonial nation, it would create a colonial nation. Or yeah, every time you got four provinces in colonial region, it would take those four provinces and turn them into a colonial nation. Like Newfoundland is over here. They're a colonial government that belongs to England. All right? So, and they're good and they're fine and they're whatever, but it means that you don't get to directly control this land. Now, there is a way for you to move your capital overseas. You can only do it if you're down to a single province remaining in Europe. If you only own one province in Europe, then you can move your capital overseas. And if you do that, you'll no longer form colonial nations as you expand. So, that's what you do as Ireland. And you do it as Ireland because they're really the only people, or yeah, you do it as Connacht actually, because they're the only people who have a hope of reaching North America early enough to be able to swing that. So let's go ahead and just drop out to the main menu and talk about exactly how you would do this kind of craziness. I mean, any game as Ireland is actually a little bit difficult. And CK2, starting as Ireland, is like the ultimate easy mode, right? But in Europa, it's certainly a lot harder. And a big reason that it's hard is because of England. Now, so there are four nations available in Ireland. There are five provinces here, but Meath, of course, is controlled by England at the start. So you do have the option of playing as Tyrone, Connacht, Munster, not Münster, which is German, or Leinster over here. And it's always confusing to me that the nation of Tyrone is the province of Ulster. So I'm going to constantly get those two confused all the way. So the reason you choose Connacht is because they are slightly closer to North America, and it can help there. I'm actually not sure if the timings really matter one way or another, but there you have it. Anyway, so let's drop into a game as them and talk about what's what. So it is very important, if we want to be able to move our capital overseas, we have to only own Connacht. But that doesn't mean we can't control more land about that. First of all, if you don't know how to move your capital, click on any province. Up over here in the top left corner, there's going to be the symbol for your capital and your trading port. And if you have more than one province, you'll be able to click on the other thing. Well, yeah, I won't have an example here because I only have the one province. But you can click to move your capital. It costs money. Or not money, it costs, I think, admin points, and you can only do it so often. And as of the most recent sort of expansion patches, you can also move your main trading port as well, using the same kind of mechanic. So the idea is, at some point, we discover North America, we have a colonist, we colonize there, so we have one province over here, or at least one province. Don't let it go up to four, because otherwise they'll form a colonial nation. And then at some point, after we've finished, building the colony, it's an actual province of ours, we will click to move our capital over there. So there are certain pros and cons to doing that. The advantages is that anything in North America, A, won't form colonial nations, and B, will not count as distant overseas. In fact, what's ironic, well, not ironic, but, what may be counterintuitive, everything back home, everything you leave in Ireland, will then be the distant overseas, which will give you a 75% penalty to your tax income. But, you're only going to have Ireland over here. You're going to have, like, all of North America over here. You saw in my video how much of it I own. I didn't even do it that quickly. That was in 1636, I think. I'll pop it back open a little bit later if I remember, and that. But, I have a fair bit of it. And again, that was with not going super, super fast. So you end up with a complete dominance of North America, and there's some more stuff you can do there. One of the downsides, though, is that you are quite far. Your capital is so distant from the European powers that they consider you to be, like, very distant in terms of royal marriages and alliances. So it's actually hard to end up keeping your alliances and royal marriages and stuff with European powers, which can be a little bit tricky if you decide that you do want to keep doing things over here, or if your Irish territories are being threatened by powerful England or even Great Britain, for example. On the other hand, at a certain point, you might be willing to just give all this stuff up and be like, who cares? One of the other question marks that you can have is, do you at any point convert all your old Irish stuff into a vassal. Like, you release Leinster as a vassal and give them all of Ireland, for example, because it would not count as distant overseas for them. Which is good, and then you still get half their tax income, so there's some interesting potential there. The downside to doing that is you lose your presence in the London trade node, and you might want to have a decent amount of trade power here and just have a merchant here collecting trade, because there's a good chance it'll make a decent amount of money. On the other hand, your real goal for going to North America will be controlling trade to such an extent that maybe the Western Europe trade node doesn't see much. We'll talk about those a little bit later. So how do you actually start? Well, the default strategy is basically going to be the same as any Irish game that you have. Probably what you want to do is rival your 3 neighbors. In fact, there'll be only choices, so you may as well go ahead and rival all 3 of them. It's not going to take long for you to hate each other anyway. And in fact, they have rivaled you already. The other thing you need is a very strong ally, and ideally 2. France is probably the #1 choice for an ally. They may be willing to do it right off the bat. No. Dynastic actions, no. So you're going to want to start sucking up to France right away. Improve relations. Then you're probably going to want to make friends with either Castile or Portugal as a secondary ally. Mostly it just comes down to, let's make sure that they're not allied with England, who's your biggest threat. And of course, England starts allied to Portugal, and naturally is often quite opposed to Castile. So to me, Castile is the other friend that you make right from the start. And there's that. The other possibility is to do something with Scotland. Now, many of your little dudes here, your rivals, will actually end up allying Scotland. Which means you really won't be able to depend on them on your side. Right now, we don't have the diplomats to spare for it anyway, so it doesn't really matter too terribly much. You will want to go ahead and drop your army maintenance all the way down to nothing to start off with, because we won't actually be getting to take advantage of that. You could do it with your ships as well, but it's probably worth sending your ship to the London trade node. You do start off with only 7% trade power, but I think it'll about double if we unpause and let that ship go. And I suppose I may as well go ahead and play on slow speed, and we'll take a look at what happens there. You probably want to start building a troop right away. You start off with 3 infantry, so it seems pretty natural that you might want to throw in 1 knight in there. Now, your neighbors will probably not build a 4th unit, which is really what gives you a whole lot of edge there. We can buy a general. I probably will just make my king my ruler. That turns out to be pretty good stats there. Decent combat stats. The maneuver won't really matter because there's no mountains here. I will say this, all of Ireland is all rivers, apparently, because you cannot go from one province to another without a river crossing. So you'll always be getting a -1 penalty when you take the attack, which is kind of unfortunate. The siege bonus can actually help quite a bit here, though. So anyway, we'll get that. So we will probably have a 4-3 advantage, but we will have the river crossing. You may not be able to afford the extra 1, unfortunately. And then really it comes down to a bit of a waiting game. You really do want to get your alliances in there before you declare war. You don't have enough money right now, if you take a look at your income. We don't have enough money to support an advisor, so we probably won't be doing that at all. And we'll probably just be waiting. It would be really nice if we got a mission to give us a claim on our neighbor for free. And in the olden days, I think that was probably more likely to happen. Here you start with this pool of missions, though, and it seems to always be like this. I have started this game a few times to see if, after I set my rivals, if I might get a mission for it, but it never came up. So you've got a couple of options. One, you just be like, okay, I'll just fabricate a claim and deal with it. I think something to do might actually just be to take the solidified papal relations thing and just, complete it. And then, hope that works. Or what we could do is take the mission and then immediately cancel it. Then it'll be a year before we can get the next mission. We might get a free claim out of it that way. Either way, I mean, we're sort of going to be stuck waiting. So what I do at this point is what I did in my run is I waited at this point. Oh, Scotland actually wants an alliance. So who else have you allied with? Leinster and Munster, which makes me very sad. But I'll go ahead and take it. Actually, I can't keep playing here because I want to make this video quick. So, one of the things the strategy on the wiki says is when you take over your 3 neighbors over here, just vassalize them because you need to stay as a 1-province minor so you can move your capital. I disagree about that. And the reason I disagree about it is because you only have 4 relations available. And ideally, you're going to have relations with France and Castile tied up probably. You might also have Scotland. You don't really have room to have 3 vassals, and these are going to be insignificant minor vassals. So what I did is I actually ended up taking I had them as vassals at first, and then I was like, wait, this isn't working out at all because I need diplomatic tech. I probably need to get to tech 7 to get the increased colonial range, and certainly I want and you need exploration ideas. So I'm going to be sinking diplomacy points in exploration ideas. I'm going to be sinking diplomacy points into teching up my diplomacy. I can't be above my diplomacy limit with these vassals. So I ended up annexing everything except for Tyrone. I left them as a vassal, with the idea being when it was finally time, when I colonized overseas and it was time for me to move my capital, I sold the 3 provinces to Tyrone, and then I was a 1 province minor, so I could move my capital over, and then I just annexed Tyrone once again after that. And then so I once again controlled all of Ireland. And at that point, since I controlled all of Ireland and I had reached admin tech level 10, I was able to enact the decision to form the Irish nation, because why not? You know, it's, you get more tax, so that's cool. I mean, more tax for a little while. And, you know, being Ireland is awesome. So I did that. So yeah, so that was the flow of that game. That's how I did the trick to go overseas, right? So once again, you do want to take your neighbors, and really you just get the 4th unit and then hope you can declare war, is what it comes down to. Sometimes you may have to restart. Every now and again, your neighbors will all ally with each other. So here, Tyrone and Leinster are allied together, and Munster is allied to Scotland. So it does leave you to a bit of an awkward situation. You might have to time it out so that Scotland will be busy doing something else. Yeah. Now, with the siege leader, you siege a little bit faster. You might actually be able to complete a siege of Munster here before Scotland could really do something. And certainly they're going to have to land troops on you. So you might be able to just keep moving troops in the way and interrupting their landing, or if they decide to land, then they're going to get a -2 crossing penalty and have a really hard time. So that's the initial setup. Let's go back and talk about my save here, and we'll discuss some of the trade advantages and strategies that you might want to employ once you've actually moved to North America. Load game, right over here. Not the autosave, that would be the wrong one. I'll load this one. All right. So yeah, I actually thought, I may have mistimed it. I'm not sure what the distances are. I feel like it might actually be possible to get to Greenland faster than I did, and then use that as a foothold to go over. But by the time I did it by getting like Diplo Tech level 7, which again gives you that big boost in colonial range, and I had the idea that gave me the 50% extra colonial range. That was maybe the problem. I might have been able to get to Greenland sooner if I could have gotten a diplomatic leader, an advisor, that gives you the 20% trade range, the colonial range bonus. But I didn't have one of those in my pool, so I wasn't able to do that. I suspect that may have been the case, and I think that probably slowed me down. In any case, by the time I could reach Greenland, I could actually reach North America proper, so I went ahead and did that. Kind of a funny swap here in Newfoundland. This actually used to be English, and this actually used to be mine. Then I lost this colony, and then England colonized here, and anyway, this defected me. Long story. Trade is where a lot of your money is going to go, and right now I'm like starting to experience that. If we take a look at my my income stuff, the trade is already the bulk of my income, although I do have a tax penalty right now because of an event that fired. Still, trade is going to be a big part of the money, and that's only going to grow as the game continues forward. So if we take a look at the trade situation, you can see here the Gulf of St. Lawrence. A lot of the North American trade, well actually I think all of the nodes in North America certainly, can eventually flow through to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Obviously, it can leave here to go to Western Europe. The Caribbean can leave to Western Europe. Yes, there. Down here, the Brazilian node is the only one that will go directly to Africa, to the Mauritanian coast. Although, then, or Mauritian coast, I suppose, then you can swing it right back to the Caribbean. And then over here, if you stay on the western side, it'll flow up here and then generally into the Caribbean. And a lot of these will sort of flow the right way just because the AI at the start, that's sort of how they're going to want to send the trade. So really control over the Gulf of St. Lawrence trade node is paramount. I've got about 73% of the trade power now. Got a little bit of competition from just England, or rather Newfoundland here. Which is indirectly basically England. There's a little bit of things here, and there's still a few little native groups. The Hurons have been reduced to an OPM, and it looks like there's someone else over here that is competing, and of course Portugal, just a tiny bit. But I've got the bulk of it, and most importantly is I did pick up Stadacona, which has the St. Lawrence estuary, which is 10% or plus 10 trade power, which is pretty darn strong. And I've been building some trade buildings. I've got a tiny fleet, not much of one, certainly nowhere close to my force limit at this time, just because I've been spending things doing other stuff. So, you know, your mileage may vary as you do that job better or worse or whatever. So, Control of the Gulf of St. Lawrence is great because then you get to actually claim this money. Of course, you don't need to have a merchant here because you automatically collect trade in your home node, and this is indeed my home node. It's my capital and my main trading port, so I don't need a merchant here. If I did, I'd get a tiny bit more cash out of it, but I probably wouldn't be flowing as much cash into the node. So next up, we've got Chesapeake Bay here, which is actually a pretty valuable node, and as is, 100% of the trade is being sent towards the Gulf of St. Lawrence, so that's a pretty good setup. Now, that's actually happened even long before I controlled all of it, but now I have, I don't actually have 100% domination of it. Bermuda over here technically allows Portugal to have a foothold in Chesapeake Bay, which is kind of awkward, and I don't like that. But I do have a merchant in here to send the trade upwards. I bet you I could remove that merchant now that I think about it. For a long time I needed him, but I bet you now I could remove him. And I don't think I need any ships patrolling here. I shouldn't have any ships patrolling here at all. And I don't. I get 2 points from having the merchant present, but who cares? Having the merchant present means you can choose where the trade is flowing, but I think if I moved them, I might actually be okay. Conway over here is an important trade node. No, I'm wrong. That's just the benign neglect kicking in. There we go. The Hudson Estuary in Manhattan is an important trade node. So if you want to prioritize something, you can do that. So of course, most of this land here had stuff in it when I came. They were native groups, but they're pretty easy to defeat because they are in the North American technology group, which is always going to be relatively backwards. They tech up slowly, and their units are not necessarily as good as Western units, although it's a lot closer than it used to be. You can see the Hurons here, though, have military level 9, and I'm currently sitting at 19. That differential makes it pretty damn easy to just go and wreck everything. You will, if you're taking that route, of course, you cannot vassalize people that are that far behind you in tech, so you can't do the military vassalization followed by diplomatic annexation, which can be really nice to avoid rebellions and save yourself some admin points. Although now it does cost diplomacy points. So you actually have to go to war and just conquer things the old-fashioned way and annex the provinces in the peace deal, and then you have to core them after that. The peace deals, it's relatively cheap. Usually there's relatively low war score on these provinces, but the coring costs are going to be relatively the same because the coring costs are based on the tax base. A lot of them have a low tax base, so the coring cost is going to be cheap that way, I suppose. But that also means there's less value in having it. But other than that, I mean, the costs are pretty samey. So we've got that. I have gone down, so I've got a little bit of a presence in the Caribbean. No, I'm lying. No, I do have... There we go. I do have Florida. So I do have a bit of a presence here, which is quite nice. I'm actually going to have to build some trade buildings there. I don't think I'd fully clued into the fact that I have a province in this node. I do have some ships patrolling here, and I do have a merchant here because I want to make sure, like right now, it looks like a lot of it is actually staying in the Caribbean. People must be collecting there. Not many people are sending it to Western Europe, which is good now. We'll see what it's like later on in the game because I expect there's going to be a lot more competition there. But I'm flowing a fair amount of trade up that way. I think, especially if I build the trade buildings here and send maybe a little bit more of a fleet over here, I should be able to grab a lot more of this trade power. Another one worth talking about here is the Mississippi River, which is kind of interesting because you're going to want to make a choice. You could either go directly to Chesapeake Bay. Actually, sorry, you can go directly to the Gulf of St. Lawrence from the Mississippi River, which might be what you want to do, because this, ideally, you're going to have the situation where you have 90% plus of the trade power here. Ideally, hopefully you can swing it by improving things, but I may have to kick some people off my property here. So you could go directly to Gulf of St. Lawrence. For me, going to the Gulf or to the Chesapeake Bay would effectively be the same because anything that flows here should flow up north. Or I can just sort of let it go to the Caribbean, and ideally I'm pulling things up there. So you're going to have to look at your numbers and make decisions about where things are. Man, I really would like to expand into Mississippi proper. The problem is France is here. Very annoying. We'll have to do something about them. Again, I think I could have gotten over here a little bit faster, and I think then I would have... given up less territory to some of the other big powers, but I can't really complain. I do have a big chunk of space, and I still have some room to expand over here and, kind of a late game to try to monopolize everything. We'll see how it goes. I finally just hit that place where I've really got a good, positive, constant workflow or cash flow going on. I'm not quite at my force limit. I'm certainly low on my actual manpower, but also my total manpower is not as high because I'm now, I'm producing buildings in bulk, or at least I thought I was. I have built a fair bit of buildings in a few places. And anyway, I think that's the thing to do. So I'm going to keep it doing that. I'm debating launching invasion of England over here. I haven't fully committed to the plan yet, simply because It's all going to be distant overseas, so it has less value for me to hold it. I could spin off a big vassal and may, in fact, do that. But there's a part of me, regardless of if it makes sense, to focus here versus focusing in North America. I really would love to just conquer the full British Isles, and just that would feel pretty good, I think. Plus, I believe, I'm not sure, if I had the right property, would I be able to form Great Britain? I'm not sure if I've got the right culture group. I'm Irish. I think you have to be Welsh or Scottish or English. Maybe not Welsh, but you may have to be just Scottish or English to form Great Britain, which is too bad because the Great British ideas are pretty good. The Irish ones I don't mind either. I mean, less land attrition, sure, that's fine. Cheaper stability, yeah, okay. Reduced national revolt risk actually has worked out really well for me, as I like constantly grab so much native territory that I go well above my my overextension. More tax is okay, but we're actually making more money from trade than tax, so it's not ideal there. Diplomatic reputation doesn't really help that much either, because we are over in the New World and not doing that much diplomacy. The loyal Catholics are interesting, because there was a period where I was debating switching religions away from Catholicism, but when I noticed that I have like crazy bonus papal influence going on over here, it was like, okay, no, Catholic for life, go. I probably have to assign some more people over here too to fight for things. I did spend some amount of time where I was in control of the Holy See. I'm not right now, though, but I do still have 2 cardinals underway and a 3rd one being worked on. Probably throw some bribage that way. Yeah, and then more efficient rebel support, which is actually going to be really interesting as I plot and ploy against England, because you can actually see there's some sieges going on there. They are at war against the Aztecs, but that's hardly a thing. The sieges going on here are rebels. I'm absolutely positive that's the case. So, oh, it looks like Welsh nationalists, actually, which have already revolted. But I think that you can still have them revolt, and I would really like them to be able to claim some territory, because when a nationalist claims a province, sieges a province out, it leaves a core behind. Yeah, Wales already has a core there, actually, and here. And if they can spread that around, then what's great is I could take Glamorgan over here and then release Wales as a vassal of myself, and then start feeding this vassal as they get more and more cores. So there's some potential for fun there. So I certainly will be making a move against England. Maybe I'll feed all of England to Wales, and then it'll be an Irish-Welsh coalition against the world, which might feel pretty good. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the idea and the strategy got through okay. But it is a very, very, very fun way to play, because it actually brings back some of the earlier days of EU4 before the various patches, where before colonial nations, right, before Conquest of Paradise, when you could just do this and it would just be your country. Although with the distance overseas, this would have been less great, because you're still getting 75% penalty on your tax base and manpower and all that, whereas I am not. The biggest downside is that, there's a lot of improvement to be done to this territory to make it somewhat less wild. Anyway, that is it. I will see you guys next time.